That's our oil. We need it. And we suck up more than anybody else. But now China and India want that. So now you have another aspect of this international scene where we are in competition with other countries that are friendly, not friendly. But the fact is, they are gaining so that they don't have to. They will not be coming here in such great numbers. The biggest growing business in China is teaching English. When I was in China 4 years ago, a month after 9/11, my wife and I took a trip to China. And it was strange. We saw street signs in all the cities, even little cities, and they were in Chinese and in English. And we asked the guide, what is this? Everybody must speak English here. They said, nobody speaks English here. So you wondered what was in their plan to always have English signs. And they all take on English names. All the Chinese, educated Chinese people now have English names. They may have Chinese names, but they all have English names as well, or American names, however you want to put it. And it was in the paper, Wall Street Journal today, one of the biggest businesses in China today, internally in China, is teaching English. Okay, so that's good, yes, but it says that they are going to become a power in the economic world because teaching English, that's a communication link that permits them to do business easier and better and more efficiently. There'll be less misunderstandings. So that's going to make them a more powerful nation in the business world. And any of you that have been to China recently have seen the boom in building and the cleanliness that we don't think of when we think of China. And that's happening somewhat in India as well. And both of these countries, and here's how it relates to politics and oil. Iran, which is on our target to be, because they're developing nuclear weapons, as you know, nuclear power, which we suspect and probably will be nuclear armament. What does that do? Well, they are also a major oil producer. India and China have both signed contracts with them. Are we going to bomb Iran? Hey, I don't think that's going to happen. We don't have enough people to handle the hurricane here. We're going to push people in Afghanistan, Iraq, and now in Iran. The danger point here is Iran is the mortal enemy of Israel. Another little thing. They've had it in for Israel for a long time. They were the initial funders of Hezbollah. They're the original developers of suicide bombing. The Iranians, they had regiments of people who were trained as suicide bombers. That they've exported. That's a hell of an export, right? And it's been adapted and adopted by the Palestinians and now by Iraqis and whoever else foreign fighters that are coming in there. And they're indiscriminate. They don't care if they kill Americans, Jews, Shiites, Sunnis, it doesn't matter. As long as they get their point across, or the leaders do, and the others go to heaven and have a wonderful time. Okay? That's Iran. And we're being sort of surrounded by items which were not going to permit us to really go in there and do anything substantial. So there's oil, there's politics, there's religion. Religion in Iran, you may or may not know, that the new leader, new president of Iran, was the mayor of Tehran. And he is a conservative. Iranian young people have been rioting for years to get more freedoms. And they were getting them. Because the largest segment of the population are young people in Iran. And they were getting them. He just came out with some restrictions on women's ability to be free. We invaded Iraq to make it a democratic country. It is becoming more democratic, and you know what? They're choosing in their constitution, they're choosing certain things in there which we don't particularly like. They're free, right? They're voting it on their own. We put them there, right? But there are things in there that say something about Sharia law, which is Islam law, which says women can't do this and women can't do that. See, I have a fundamental belief myself, and the fundamental belief I have is that fundamentalists are very bad for women. All right? And where that kind of power bubbles up in this country or in the Middle East, it is bad news for women. Even though I believe women are advancing and are going to take more of a hand in the future of everybody, the fact is that these kind of things always seem to bubble up. And it is bubbling up a little bit in Iran now, because he has stated and desires to have the thing go back a little bit to more restriction. And they're going to have more religious police. They have religious police on the street watching what women wear and who they're with and who they're touching and whatever they do. But the scary part is that we have started a war in Iraq in the name of freedom, and they're putting in their constitution things which are anti-democratic, in our view, democratic. Because women then will occupy a lesser role in their lives. Now let me stop for a moment and answer a few questions. Yes?
It all sounds very ominous. And
Yes.
very depressing. Do you
Yes.
have anything hopeful to say about the future?
The thing I have to say about the future, and I'll cover a few of those things, and I don't want to be so somber, but unfortunately well, let's face it, Katrina did us all in. I feel less proud I'm still proud to be an American, but I feel a little less proud by the way our officials have acted there, or not acted there.
But it has brought out some of the
It has, what Katrina brought out is the positive side of America, and that is the people. We as people still believe in this America that we thought we had. The amount of money raised for that disaster is by far more than 9/11 or any other disaster that's ever happened. The amount of work that private enterprise has been involved with in trying to save people, and individuals that have gone there, policemen from New York City and firemen from Los Angeles, and people from all over this country have gone as individuals and as small organizations down there, non-elected officials down there to help. You know, many of them were held at the border. They weren't even permitted to go there. You know that, right? So if we didn't have good planning, which we thought, it's coming out now with all this 9/11 and transportation funds and all that are going through, like a $250 million bridge in Alaska to an island where there are 50 people. I mean, the kind of garbage that we are living with, unfortunately, is becoming more uncovered and hopefully corrected. I don't know if it will be. But the fact is, we're angry. Most people are angry in this country. And it's not Democrat, Republican, because we knew New Orleans was going to be a disaster area since 1927. They had a major flood and hundreds of thousands of people were in bad shape then. They've known this through all administrations. $10 billion would have fixed it. It's going to be $200 billion? You think $200 billion to fix it. What about the trauma to the young people? What about the dead people? What about the displaced people? What about the people who didn't do without their medicine? What about the criminals that now have escaped and the files on them that have escaped? How many people will be suffering around this country because they're not staying there? They're going to go escape and do their bad business somewhere else. We don't have any records of a lot of these people anymore. DNA evidence has been destroyed. It is a horror story that you and I, it's going to be long after we're gone for the people in this country. So I feel very unhappy about the politicians and what they did and the bureaucracy and what they've done. There were legitimate reasons why some organizations were kept out of Louisiana and Mississippi, because we have laws protecting states against the federal government, which does prevent certain, but the president could have overcome that. But he was on he wasn't watching television that day, okay? And the head of FEMA was I don't know where he was. I don't know where he is.
Oprah donated $12 million.
The point is that individuals have given of themselves. After all, think about it. There are people, private citizens, that went down there into those poison waters. I don't think I would want to walk through those waters with who knows what's in there, human feces, dead people, chemicals of all kinds. You can't boil that water to drink it because chemicals don't boil out, only bacteria does. So they were walking through this with cuts and cut your foot on glass, right? How many people are going to suffer for years and die really from that situation? Because of incompetence, because of greed, because of stupidity, because of a lot of things, okay? So it's all related. Unfortunately, it's all related. But the hope is on the people level. Is that going to sway it? I don't know. Because right now you've got $200 billion now pledged to help that, and Bush is going to get it from somewhere. Keep your wallets tied up. The fact is that they're lining up to get the contracts for that. If I were in business down there, wouldn't I want a contract? And now they're giving individual low-level bureaucrats the ability to spend used to be like $5,000 discretionary money. Now it's $250,000. So hey, make friends with your local clerk, and maybe you'll get a few $100,000 in your pocket. That's going to happen. That's going to happen. So we see the seamy side, unfortunately. The only good side is that there are still decent people in this country that are unselfish. Unselfish. And they believe in the original intent of why this country was developed and how we have progressed and how we have given freedom to peoples. I hope that translates into some sort of epiphany for the bureaucrats and the politicians. I don't know if that's going to be true, nor do you. The trend is what? You tell me. The trend is we're going to overcome all that has been hidden away and now opened up, or are they going to eventually grab their little piece? It bodes ill for this country, especially when I talk to you about China and other countries who are gaining economically, gaining in strength financially. When South Korea, about a year ago, I think it was, decided, sort of put out a feeler that they weren't going to buy United States Treasury notes. Because you know, the people that finance our low interest rates in this country, it's China, it's Korea, it's all those people that hold our federal monies. They buy our bonds. So there was a little moment in time about a year ago where South Korea says, I don't know, we're going to buy euros maybe, because euro. I was in Europe 4 years ago and I paid, it cost me 90 cents for a euro. Now it's what, $1.30, $1.25, $1.30? That's a huge percentage increase. So we're in South Korea, we think maybe the euro's a better thing. They just made mention of that somewhere. Our markets collapsed here. Okay? So the fact is they do hold a hand in our country. China, Korea, and whoever else has money here. Saudi Arabians for that money, for that also. The fact is that we're connected to the world and we are becoming, our friends didn't look at us with great respect when they see what happened in the South. And what did our enemies do? They were dancing in the streets. Dancing in the streets. And Osama bin Laden had a statement I saw after that, and some other people. We're trying to change the world into our thinking of freedom and justice. And we are finding that there's a lot of holes in that, in our own. We all individually, that's what we believe strongly, right? But some of it gets sidelined. So the hope is, to answer that lady's question again, is that we as individuals and the people we've elected and do elect wake up to the dangers that we are now facing. And not us so much, but our children's children's children face. Because that's where it's going to be the telling change. That's the trend. The trend is not good for this country at the moment, unfortunately. So we're talking trends. That's a major trend that I fear is a problem unless we wake up. Yes, any other, this question over here?
One issue in the South that we didn't bring up right now is racism that has existed in the South. It seems to me many of them are sort of fighting the Civil War. The fact that there were so many black and so many in bad shape and poverty-stricken, which no one seemed to account for. People thought of New Orleans as a rah-rah city, but they were covered with black people there that have, they allowed them to drown and whatever.
Yes, well, the fact is, I don't know if it was, I can't answer for whether it was racial that they let them drown. I can,
They sent buses in for them, they would have gotten out. People that had cars and had money got out.
no, I'm saying is that there was, I believe that nobody purposely wanted to kill them. I believe that maybe they didn't pay enough attention to getting those people out. That's correct. The bureaucracy and the powers that be didn't do what they were supposed to do. I absolutely agree with that. But I would say to you that I don't know how many cities in this country you've been to, but I've been to an awful lot of them. I've been to Cleveland, I've been to New York, I've been to Miami, I've been to New Orleans, just to mention a few. There are those kinds of communities in all of them. Have you been driven not too far from here into, let's say, Flushing recently? And go in the side streets? Not stay on the main streets, go on the side streets. You want to see poor people? You'll see poor people. I once got lost in the Bronx because my wife's grandparents lived there many years ago, and 30 years ago I drove in the Bronx. I was lucky that police came up to me and said, "What are you doing here?"
Oh, stop that.
Okay?
My office in the Bronx. Don't talk that way.
Quiet.
The
My
point-
office in the
The
Bronx.
point is,
And I'm not afraid to walk the streets in the Bronx. Don't talk that way.
I'm talking 30 years ago,
I'll
sir.
walk in the Bronx any street.
We're not arguing, sir. I'm saying 30 years ago. The point is,
I was born in the
New York is changing. New York is changing, and albeit the fact that your office is there, and I've been there many times since myself. I am saying something that happened 30 years ago. My point is, New York, if you talk about New York is probably one of the best places to be and happen to be changing. If you go to places like I go to Williamsburg, I have Williamsburg, which was not a place that most people would like to walk around now. You go there, it's all young people, new cafes, new buildings, new plans. New York is very enlightened, as contrary to what the image of what New York is. You couldn't walk in Central Park a few years ago. Now, for the most part, you don't worry about that. New York has become a much nicer place, but there are still places, sir, in New York City that you do not want to walk around, nor do I. And this wonderful, I speak, by the way, in New York, in the Bronx. I have 5 accounts in Riverdale. Do you like Riverdale?
Yes.
Beautiful.
Is that the Bronx?
Yeah.
Okay, I
The
love
rich part of the Bronx.
I love Riverdale. I was there just 2 days ago, and I have 5 places I speak to there, okay? My point is, there are pockets and places and streets right here in Queens that I guarantee you, because I used to go there all the time, I commuted to New York, and sometimes I would park in Queens, and I would walk through some of these and drive through some of these neighborhoods. I would not want to be there overnight. My point is, you can't condemn the whole of the people for racism. These are poor people in some cases. They're illegals in other places. They do not want to see police. Police are attacked. And by the way, firemen have been attacked in New York City, haven't they been? Firemen have been in the past. Maybe not, I haven't read about it recently, but they would go to fight a fire in one of these neighborhoods, and people would bombard them from the roofs. You don't never heard those stories?
Yeah.
I think you have, sir. The fact is, that was New Orleans. I've been in New Orleans. I've been in New Orleans where I've been in those crowds where I don't want to be. The fact is, it's a rough and tumble city and always has been. So I don't attribute it to race in New Orleans, although that is still a factor, no question. But I attribute it more and more to another problem that's happening in this country, and that's class. There is a growing gap between haves and have-nots in this country. That's unfortunate. You do not see it in many other countries. You do not see it, but it is here. And the fact is, that's not going to be helped by what happened in New Orleans, because rich people are going to get very rich. I heard a guy being interviewed just yesterday. He said, I'm buying up all the property I can, because there are people saying, hey, I lost my house, I didn't have flood insurance, I can't build it again, my property's worthless, I'm never coming. So this guy's picking up that land for nothing. There are people who are going to make a lot of money on the rebuilding of that area, a lot. Now, that's free enterprise, that's fine. But the point still is that there is a growing gap in this country, which the statistics show, that we are not taking care of. Many thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions in this country do not have health insurance. You know that, right? The fact is that we're all probably taken care of in this room, but there are many parts of our population that do not have that taken care of. That's unheard of in many parts of this world. We're supposed to be the leaders. That's the problem I see. The problem is the trend for us is not upwards. It is upwards if we correct ourselves and make these changes and act more intelligently in places like the Middle East. I mean, there's just no way we're going to be able to fight wars and spend monies to protect our own citizen at the same time. I'm not anti-war. I'm for war, frankly, but for just wars. But unjust wars, or let's say wars that are not carried on properly and judiciously and expeditiously without thinking and planning, obviously that just sucks our money away and sucks our spirit away. The American public is getting a little bit upset about it. My feeling is it's the American public which will eventually pull the country back up, not the politicians and not the bureaucrats. Yes? Somebody else? Yes.
I don't think you could disregard the race factor in this New Orleans.
The what
The
factor?
racist factor, racism.
Racism?
Can't discount it completely. One thing was the remarks made by Mother Bush when she said that these people were used to poverty, and she thought they were faring very well in that Superdome, which should have been condemned.
The
And
fact
it's okay
is-
for her. No, let me finish.
No, I agree with you. I'm not arguing with you. My point to that is, Senior Bush, her husband, when he ran for president, one of the things that did him in was he was at a checkout counter at a supermarket, and he said, "Oh, what is this here?" And, you know, the scanners. He didn't know what a scanner was. Okay, when everybody that knows anything knows they're scanners, right? He says, "I don't know what's a scanner about." His son, George Bush, went down to New Orleans and arrived here and said, "Hey, I used to have a great time down here. People are dying and starving. They just pulled some guy out 18 days without food or water. People were dying and starving and bleeding to death there, babies without formula or of any food." And he goes down and says, "Hey," with his starched shirt and very neatly looking, and nice photo op, "I used to have a great time down here." But that's the same thing. They're at that point that they're disconnected to the rest of us. It's not a matter of money, it's a matter of what? Class? That's real class differential. Like, let them eat cake, right? Somebody said that, didn't they?
And where is Mrs. Bush, the president's wife? You don't
Well-
hear of her doing anything. If this happened in Clinton's time, Hillary would have been right out there pitching in and doing something, regardless of what you think of her. But she was an activist and she cared.
Again, I'm not a Democrat and I'm not a Republican. All I can say is what I see. And all I can tell, and all my interpretations of what I see, and what I see is not good. So I can't vouch for what Clinton would do or what Hillary would do and so forth. I can only vouch for this thread that you brought out, that Mrs. Bush said this, but I remember Mr. Bush said that, and the younger Bush said that. There's a connection there somewhere that says, I'm sort of way up, I'm in the clouds, and I guess you people live that way, don't you? And there was no real feeling for that position. So that's my agreeing with you, yes.